Welcome home, good hunter.
Hello, and welcome to part 3 of the Hunter Mob painting tutorial for Bloodborne. Why part 3? Well, honestly that's because I deleted my footage of painting the part 2. You may mock me. Anyway, I'll be moving on to the gun and lamp guy. There, I took my other brush, which means now it's not going to split everywhere. So, taking some of my paint, and we are just going to be painting all of the undershot. I am now done with the jacket, so I'm going to move on to the pants, which on the gameplay footage are grey. So I'm going to go with graphite for this one. On my palette like always. A little bit more this time. There we go. Diluting it on the wet palette. So, and then start applying, including between the legs where it is kinda hidden. And on this one, remember that the boots are actually going all the way to the knees, so you don't need to go all the way down. The pants are now base coated, so I'm going to move on to the boots, which for this guy are supposed to be brown. So for this, I'm going to use brown leather from Scale 75. Once again, shake it up. Some on the palette, diluting it, there we go, that's good enough. So now it's just a question of going on all of the leather of these boots, which, as I said, goes all the way up to the knee. This one, I'm just going to be a little bit careful not to go too much, if at all, onto the grey of the pants, because it will be a bit more of a pain to correct. For the coat, you don't need to care, because we're going to put a pretty dark grey all over it anyway. I am now done with the boots, so I'm going to move on to what little flesh we can see. There is the hands, and this guy is actually not wearing any kind of bandages, so there is just a tiny bit between the hair and the hat that you can paint. So in order to do that, Scale 75 light skin like before, and I'm going to mix it with graphite again, which is still there, in order to give it a sickly look. So mixing. I'm going to put it next to the graphite. I need very little of it. And like before, I'm just going to be diluting it first, like so. And I'm going to mix some graphite directly in, because I'm not going to make any gradients for that. There we go. So, like I said, painting both of the hands. Be careful not to go too much over the bandages. So, too much paint on my brush. I have not painted the flesh, but I lied. I'm going to do the hair before I do the coat, because for the hair I'm going to use the SS Camo Medium Brown from Scale 75, and this is not a color that covers very well, and I don't want to have corrections to do all the time. So, I'm going to start with this one, just a bit on here again. I might actually mix it with some of the brown leather from before to give it some color difference with the first one that I painted. Just taking a little bit of it, put it right there, and going to mix some of these. Yeah, it is slightly darker. I'm going to use this. So I'm going to paint all of the hair with this particular color. And the hair goes, obviously, all over the head. I have not painted the hair, so I'm going to move on finally to the coat. For that, I'm going to use the same one that, for the model I forgot to record, it's graphene. I'm going to paint that all over it, then it will be darkened using a shade. So, first things first, putting a good amount of it on the palette, like so. Diluting once more. Good enough. And just paint that all over the coat and also the hat. And remember, the hat has an underside. You are not going to see it very often, but you'll know it's there. And if you're as OCD as I am, it's going to bug you forever. Now that the coat has been painted, I'm going to go onto the barrel and all of the metallic part of the rifle itself. For this, I'm going to be using some Skill 75 black metal. Opening it. Don't need a lot again. Even, maybe a little bit more. This should be more than sufficient. Like always, need to dilute it just a little bit. And this one covers really well, so you shouldn't have much issue. Just be careful not to put it on any of the gray part. So just go all around the gun barrel, like so. And paint on top, like so, with just the tip of the brush, going all the way back. Now that the gun barrel is painted, I'm going to move on to the stock. For this, I'm going to be using some contrast paint Wildwood. Shaking it real well to make sure that there is no pigments lying at the bottom. There we go. And because of the zenithal highlight, everything is already a correct color that's going to help without the need for highlighting. It's just a question of putting it all over the rifle. Like so. While the stock of the gun is drying, I'm going to go to the lamp itself. The lamp is, well, it's supposed to be metal, obviously, and I'm going to give it kind of an old, decayed brass. So in order to do that, I'm going to mix two paints. I'm going to take decayed metal from Skill 75, and I'm also going to use Victorian brass. I'm going to mix the two together and apply that all over the lamp. Mixing it, obviously. Okay, first, and to see it's it really does look like very old brass that has completely decayed. When it dries, it gives a little bit of a greenish tone. Some Victorian brass, which is, well, pretty much regular brass. Diluted the decayed, now diluting the Victorian brass, like so. And mixing the two together in the middle. A little bit more brass. Good. So now I'm just going to paint this all over the lantern. The lamp has now been completely painted, so I'm going to move on to the coat. For the coat, it's going to be the shade, and I'm going to use Black Templar mixed with Contrast Medium. This is to give it some definition and also to bring down the, well, to make it darker. So, I'm going to take some of this Black Templar, putting it right there. It would have been better to have a regular palette, but I'm too lazy to go get it. So, I'm going to use the wet palette instead. 2, 3, and typically I like to do it 1 to 4 for this particular use. So mix the medium and the contrast paint, and once it is thoroughly mixed, start applying it on all of the black or dark grey details. The shade on the coat is not dry, so I'm going to move on to the all-over shade. For this, I'm going to do the same thing as before. I'm going to mix some Agraxos shade and some Athonian camo shade. So for this, I'm going to go with 3 of the Athonian camo shade and 1... I'm going to do 3 Agraxos shade and 1 Athonian camo shade. Well, 3 of the brown, 1 of the green. There we go. Mixing all of these together. I'm just going to put a drop of Flowate inside. This is going to help with avoiding pooling. There we go. And I'm just going to slap that all over the model. And actually I'm going to change my brush. And put it on absolutely everything. Okay, the shade is not completely dry, but I can do some of the highlights already. So, first up, I'm going to do it on the lamp. For doing that, I'm going to go back to Victorian brass. So, I'm going to put some of it back on my palette, because everything has been mixed. Just a tiny bit of water again. There we go. And I'm going to do a edge highlight on all of the gray surfaces, or every sharp surface, like this one, or sharp edge I should say. I have done the first highlight for the lamp, so I'm going to move to the metal of the gun. For this, I'm just going to reapply some black metal again. So, I'm going to put some back on the palette once again. And I'm just going to add some shiny metal on some of the parts only. Like for example, it seems that we have two pieces of receiver right there, so a little bit there, a little bit here on this receiver or band. I'm not entirely sure what it's supposed to be. There we go. We're going to add some of it also on what I suppose is a bolt, like so. And I'm also going to put just a bit on the barrel. I'm not doing a complete line, I'm just stippling it on to keep the impression that this is not very well maintained. And there we go. And do that on all three models. The highlights on the barrel are now done, so I'm going to move on to the grey for the coat. For that, I'm still going to use some graphene. And in this particular case, it's going to be mostly edge highlights. Yeah. Diluting it with a bit of water again. Ooh, that's too liquidy. So, let's see. Good enough. So, for this we have obviously the hat. To move all around it. Like so. For the coat we have a few parts. We have this kind of belty thing. I don't know what this is supposed to be. I'm just going to I'm just going to line the top of it if I can see what I'm doing. So, and for each of the fold I'm just going to line them a little bit with more diluted paint than that actually, because I don't want to leave some sharp lines anywhere. It's pretty liquidy. Let's add a little bit more pigment into it, like so. And I'm just going to put some paint on the flatter surfaces, and it might look fairly visible right now, but this is going to tone down as it dries. Okay, I am done with the highlights of the coat, so I'm going to move on to the stock of the gun. For this one, I think what I'm going to do is just take some SS Camo medium brown, and I'm just to do a semi-dry brush on the wood itself to get some of the grain with this old frayed brush. So I'm going to put some of it on my paper towel, because yes, I have a paper towel right next to me. Just going to put some of it on the brush. Remove most of it, but not nearly enough for really qualifying as a true dry brush. And I'm just going to rub it like so. And as you can see, I'm actually catching some of the texture. For this one, I'm going to go in the other direction because I don't want to catch the metal too much if I can help it. So, doing the same thing on the other side. So I am done with the highlights on the stock of the gun, and I also applied the same technique to the hair. I'm going to move on to the boots. For the boots, I put some brown leather back on, and I'm going to reapply it a little bit like what I did for the coat, reusing the base color and re-establishing it. It's still going to be mostly a hedge highlight. So you have the side of the boots, right there. Going around like so. It's a little bit difficult to access the inside, but it is still doable. Here we go. Just apply some color in some of the visibly raised areas. There is a few of them on the boots, but for this I need a paint that is fairly thin in order to not leave any marks. So, right there. Yes, small raised area right there. Then obviously you have closer to the feet, you have the ankles, the heel, a bit on the top of the boots, like so. And you just go like this for each of the boots. I am now done with the boots, so I'm going to move to the under jacket. For this, I'm going to use field grey like before. Just going to put some there. You need very little, it's really just a few folds that you have to highlight. Okay, like so. For this, I'm going to take my finer brush. Again. So you have the one at the waist, right there. And you also have some folds higher on the vest. You have one there. And you have the sides. Like so. The underjacket is done, so I'm going to move on to the pants. I've already put some graphite back in there. I'm just going to add maybe a tad more water. And what you want to do for this one is catch all of the raised edges. So you can see that on his crotch you have a couple pieces that are a little bit higher, like so. And you also have a couple of folds on both the legs and the midriff. This, and on the legs, I just want to really cover the raised areas. You don't want to go into the deeper recesses, you just want to follow the folds. That's really all you want to do. That's all you need to do. So, and I'm just, like I said, following the raised areas and some of the folds. And there you have it, 3 hunter mobs painted in the scheme of Central Yharnam. In the next one, I'll be basing all 3 of them for the same kind of environment, and the 4th one I'll be painting in the scheme that you find in the Forbidden Woods with a different base. Until then, you can subscribe, comment, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you next time. Salut, bonsoir!